The work we do has a huge impact on the type of life we live and our level of enjoyment and fulfillment while we're living it. Which is why it's important we're super thoughtful when picking a career. Which is why Tim Urban wrote this incredible 15,000 word essay titled How to Pick a Career That Actually Fits You. We're breaking down the concepts from that essay in this video.
Hey, good morning. My name's Nils. I love helping people find and go after a career they enjoy. I just got done editing this video, the one you're watching right now, and it's longer than my videos normally are, but I just want to jump in here and say it's worth it. I would even say watch it twice. Watch it once without doing any of the exercise, and then go back and you can pause it and do the exercise. Anyway, just want to jump in here and say that. Enjoy.
While this video is in my own words, it is completely based on Tim's work. So the insights and unique terminology are his, not mine. Think of it like Tim is the professor and author of a textbook we're using, and I'm the TA. Okay, let's dive in. This video is divided into 3 sections, which are what we want, what is possible, and how to move forward in a new direction. We're going to start by figuring out what it is we want. And to do so, we're going to spend some time with a character each of us has floating around in our subconscious called the yearning octopus. Quick side note, Tim does acknowledge that it has 5 tentacles, so it really should be a yearning pentapus, but we digress. The tentacles on the yearning octopus in our subconscious represent the 5 categories of yearnings we have. There's the personal tentacle, which wants to feel fulfilled in this life we're living. It's aware of our mortality and wants to leave a mark on the world. This tentacle explains why billionaires continue to work incessantly and why a very successful person might have regrets later in life because they feel like they spent all their time doing the wrong work. The social tentacle really wants us to be liked by everyone. For some of us, it might seek fame, but for all of us, it is terrified of embarrassment. It's also the tentacle that can cause us to spend time in a career we don't particularly enjoy just to prove to our ex-boyfriend Ronnie that we could do it. The moral tentacle can't help but think that it's absurd that we might use our careers simply to enrich our wallets or egos when there is so much suffering going on in the world. Mother Teresa and a bunch of other people whose names we don't know but who do the very important work of helping the less fortunate have very outspoken moral tentacles on their yearning octopus. The lifestyle tentacle is cool with all these career aspirations as long as we still get plenty of vacation, a chef in the office, and we're able to retire at 35. The lifestyle tentacle is just chill AF. The 5th, but not least, is the practical tentacle, which is just really concerned about the logistics of all this. Because if we take a new, less paying job or go back to school or take a 3-month sabbatical to find ourselves, our practical tentacle starts sweating bullets because the rent is due. These 5 tentacles of yearnings are never completely satisfied. They are in constant conflict with each other. And that's not a problem to be solved, that's life. As Tim puts it, human yearning is a game of choices and sacrifices and compromise. The challenge we are solving for is developing a clear understanding of what we yearn for in our life. More specifically, we want to separate yearnings we have that are authentic to us from the yearnings we have but were prescribed to us by someone else, like a parent or teacher or famous person we admired when we were 13, but who maybe isn't a reflection of who we are and what we yearn for today. The challenge is, our yearning octopus isn't easily accessible. It floats around in our subconscious, which is like the basement of our mind. We can get to it, but we spend most of the time on the first floor, so we just have to be aware that we have this mind basement and make the effort to walk downstairs, if that makes sense. All right, so we've walked down into our mind basement and we're now face to face with our octopus. Now's the time to ask ourselves, what career options have I considered? This should include our current job and any other job or career we ever considered. Write them down, but don't feel any pressure doing this because it's not like we're going to be picking from these careers that you write down. This list of careers is just meant to get our gears turning. Now, we should look at each career option that we've ever considered and ask ourselves, why was this something I ever wanted to do? our answer will be used to understand the tentacles on our yearning octopus. For example, if we wanted to own a coffee shop, was it because we valued independence in our career? Did we want the status symbol that comes with owning our own business? Did we want to make a positive impact on our community? Or did we just like the idea of a job with early hours? We should do this for all the careers in front of us. Next, we need to ask, why have I not pursued these different careers? Because we can also use our fears to better understand our yearnings. For example, a fear of not fitting in might result in a yearning to be liked, or a fear of not being good enough might result in a yearning to be successful. This internal exploration can get a little deep, so take your time. Next, we need to do some additional unpacking of our fears and yearnings because our first explanation might not be the right answer. For example, does our fear of changing jobs because we don't want to downgrade to a less expensive apartment come from our lifestyle tentacle who enjoys the nice living situation, or the social tentacle who doesn't want to send a signal to our friends that we're not well on our way to becoming a millionaire? And if so, why are we afraid of that? And maybe we do have a yearning to be rich, and that's fine, but is it to prove to somebody that we're successful? Is it about security? Is it about the creature comforts? Are the creature comforts for us, or because we want other people to see our creature comforts? And if so, why do we value that? We want to keep peeling back the onion around why we're interested in these careers and why we're maybe not pursuing these careers. There's a reason why Tim's website is called Wait But Why. It's all about asking, wait, but why? Until we get to a true understanding of what the hell is going on. And in this case, we're trying to understand ourselves and what we want out of our life. If we ask why enough, we should eventually reach a dead end that has one of three explanations for yearning. One, the yearning comes from an authentic evolution of deep and independent thought. These yearnings make up who we are as individuals. They are the real deal. Two, the yearning is actually what somebody else wants for us, and we've absorbed it onto our octopus, even though it's not a yearning we share. It's wanting to be a doctor, not because we enjoy the science or improving a patient's health, but because everyone else in our family is a doctor, and our parents told us it would make them happy if we became a doctor, so here we are. Or three, the origin of the yearning isn't clear, but it's just been how we understand the world and what's right. Chances are, even if we can't pinpoint how we developed a yearning, we'll have a gut understanding if it's authentic to us or not. We're basically approaching each yearning and taking its mask off, Scooby-Doo style, to reveal its true identity. Ideally, some of our demasked yearnings are our present-day selves. But for other yearnings, we'll pull the mask off and find a parent, a pastor, teacher, or a younger version of ourselves who had desires we no longer have today. And get this, imposter yearnings can be even more abstract than just one other person's opinion. They can come from expectations placed on us by an entire family or group of friends, or society as a whole in the form of conventional wisdom. And while our moms and teachers and friends and most everyone else on this planet are all probably great people, they ain't us. And if we don't independently share their conviction and the yearnings they've installed in us, then we risk finding ourselves in a situation that serves someone else, but leaves us thinking, why the hell do I have this stupid job? So one by one, we should remove these imposter yearnings from our octopus, and what's left is a less decorated octopus, but a much more clean and clear understanding of who we are and what we want. There's one more difficult step of introspection we need to take on, and that's going down one more flight of stairs into our mind's denial prison. Denial prison is full of yearnings that we've chosen to suppress because we've been led to believe they're bad for us. So if you found some imposters on your octopus, and think about what yearnings these imposters might have helped you lock away in your denial prison. If your parents' expectations of you were to be a doctor, maybe your deep down desire to be a chef has been locked away. Or maybe you desired to work very little, but your friend group of go-getters made you feel silly for that. Maybe you desire to be a photographer, but a photographer told you it's a bad idea to turn your hobby into a job. It can be a dark place in denial prison, but spend some time down there to further flesh out your authentic octopus. Now, whether we're aware of it or not, we're all living our lives with a yearning hierarchy, meaning we prioritize our yearnings, whether they're authentic or imposters, and it's this hierarchy that ultimately decides how we spend our time and live our lives. For example, we might tell ourselves that we really want to run a marathon, but if we're not spending any time training for it, then there clearly are other things that are taking a higher priority on our yearning hierarchy. The good news is, amazing news, is that we absolutely have the ability to reorganize our yearning hierarchy. And we should do so using our newly updated list of authentic yearnings. Tim makes the case that we should organize our authentic yearnings into one of 5 categories. There's the non-negotiable bowl for the yearning that we will achieve at all cost. I say yearning and not yearnings because if we have multiple things we do at all cost, then we're probably not appreciating what at all cost means. So choose wisely here, or just leave this bowl empty for now. Below the non-negotiable bowl is the small top shelf, which holds the yearning or two we really want to strive hard for. Next is a medium-sized middle shelf, which holds yearnings that we want to avoid completely botching, followed by the bottom shelf, which are yearnings we want to keep in mind and consider, but certainly not at the expense of anything above it. And finally, there's a trash can for the yearnings we want to actively reject, because they're the desires we have that are in conflict with the person our wisest self wants to be. Like how I sometimes yearn to live a life with 0 responsibilities. Bad Nils. Getting this hierarchy right is super important because it dictates our priorities and therefore our actions moving forward. To ensure we end up with a yearning hierarchy that authentically represents us, we need to be mindful of a few things. First, some of our yearnings will inevitably be unhappy, and our fears will feel like they're being assaulted. But the whole point of this exercise is to accept this reality and just be intentional about how we're prioritizing or deprioritizing our yearnings to ensure we're pursuing a life and career that's authentic to us. Second, the tentacles are all vying for themselves, and no single tentacle knows the entire story of the life that we're trying to live. So in other words, our inner conscience is the only adult in the room, and it's our inner conscience that should decide the life we want to live, not any one tentacle. And finally, none of what we're doing here is set in stone. It's all a hypothesis that we will test as life goes on, which we'll talk about later in this video. Okay, so we have a fresh understanding for what we want and how we are prioritizing those wants. This makes up the want box for the mental framework that we're building. This is huge, especially if it required us to unmask some imposters and recognize that we aren't spending our time in a way that's representative of who we are. So that's us understanding our internal world, ourselves. The next step is a better understanding of our external world and what's possible for us. And to do this, we're going to populate our reality box. We can then look at where our want box and our reality box overlap to move forward in a direction for our career. As Tim describes it, our reality box is determined by 2 sets of beliefs. Our beliefs about the world and our beliefs about our own potential. The challenge is that these beliefs are often not rooted in reality. Just like our yearnings, our beliefs about how the world works are often shaped by our parents, former coaches, teachers, friends. And while those people or groups of people are probably all well-meaning folks, exactly none of them have ever been in the same situation that we're in today or done all of the things that we might consider. Now, when it comes to our potential, we tend to see people who are farther along on their career path and equate their performance to a natural talent that they have and we don't. When in reality, it's likely a skill they developed over time that we could also develop over time, and maybe in less time. We might also think our potential success in a career relies on luck or a big break, and leaving our future to luck is a scary feeling. But this fear is also baloney that's rarely rooted in reality, because we do have the ability to gain a clear and accurate understanding of how career outcomes are determined. And it only seems like a lottery system to those who don't know how it works. The landscape for possible careers is massive. It's made up of classic careers like firefighters and architects, and also careers that just straight up didn't exist 10 years ago, like an online geriatric yoga instructor.
Inhale. Extract.
And if there's something we want to do that no one else has made a career out of, there's probably a way that we can make a career out of it. The point is, the possibilities for each of us are vast and definitely include options that we just have never considered. We can think of each career option like a board game. Different board games have different rules and strategies, but they can all be broken down into concrete steps we can take to move towards winning the game and achieving success in that career. Conventional wisdom from parents, friend groups, etc. will tell us it knows how to play all the board games. But conventional wisdom really only understands careers that have been around forever. And even those career board games have evolved enough in the digital age that conventional wisdom is just getting worked in all of the games. The exciting part in all of this is that if we learn how to play the board game for whatever career we want to pursue, we'll have a massive edge over everyone else who's navigating via an outdated playbook of conventional wisdom.
The game is flawed.
To accurately assess our potential for any given career, well, we need to define what success looks like if we were to pursue that career, and then just ask ourselves, with enough time, is it possible for me to get good enough at this board game to reach whatever definition of success is for this career? Tim uses a spectrum to represent how good we are at playing the board game for whatever career we might pursue. Point A is where we are today, and the star represents our minimum definition of success for that career. Let's say we just graduated from culinary school and we're considering opening a restaurant. If we define success as opening a single, easygoing neighborhood restaurant, our star might be here. If we want to create a Michelin star restaurant, the star might be here. Or if we've never chopped an onion before and we want to open multiple world-class establishments, our A to star journey might look like this. A key point here is that this spectrum is not a representation of time or any single skill, like how good we are at cooking. The distance from A to star is a representation of how good we are at playing the entire game. Because if I really want to have a Michelin star restaurant, I definitely need to get good at more than cooking. I'll need to learn how to manage inventory so that my ingredients are always fresh, and learn how to create an incredible experience for my guests, and get good at schmoozing with people who write about restaurants. And I'll need to be an amazing recruiter and leader of people who will help me execute on my vision, and on and on. All that might sound daunting, but if I actually get good at all the things that make up my board game, then by definition, I will become successful in creating a Michelin star restaurant. If I get good at all the things, then I still don't have a Michelin star restaurant, then I must not have properly understood the board game. And this is where conventional wisdom can really mess everything up because it's so narrow-minded. Conventional wisdom only focuses on basic board game rules like going to school and your talent and hard work, but our ability to move from A to star is dependent on how well we do everything it takes to win the game. Once we define both success for the path we're considering and the rules of the game, then we can look to our A to star journey and think about our probability for success. As you may recall from junior high, distance traveled equals speed multiplied by time. Well, similarly, in the context of our career, our progress equals pace multiplied by persistence. Let's talk a little bit more about this equation because it's super important for understanding our probability for success in any board game that we choose to play. A recurring theme in Tim's posts on Wait But Why is the importance of making decisions based on first principles. This means we're making decisions based on the unique circumstance of the problem we're trying to solve, not by looking at how other people might have solved similar problems, aka conventional wisdom. Tim describes first principle thinking as thinking like a chef rather than thinking like a cook. A chef makes a meal by walking into a kitchen, opening the fridge, peeking in the pantry, and using whatever ingredients are available to her to make the best meal possible. Whereas a cook walks into a kitchen and waits patiently until they're handed a recipe. And there's nothing wrong with using a recipe to cook, but in life, we often have different kitchens and ingredients than the people who are handing us recipes. Well, a major factor in the pace with which we move from A to star is our ability to think like a chef. Can we make decisions and take action based on our own observation and beliefs rather than someone else's? Because that is how we truly learn the rules of the board game. It happens over time. All the while, people using conventional wisdom are playing by rules that only become more and more outdated.
This is bullshit!
A second factor that plays into our pace is our work ethic. Obviously, it's one thing to spend one weekend a month working on something. It's a whole nother thing to spend 2 hours every day marching towards that same goal. The third and final determining factor for pace is our natural abilities like IQ, EQ, savviness, cleverness, stuff like that. Side note here, stuff like money and our existing skill set do matter, but they're more determinant of where our starting point is, not our pace. And in the long run, our pace is much more important than where we're starting. Our persistence towards a goal is a much more straightforward variable to consider. The question here is, can we set out to do something that might take 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or more years to accomplish and not give up before we get there? Can we be the tortoise who does a little bit every day rather than the hare who dives in head first but inevitably burns out? Okay, so now we understand that different careers are like board games, and they're games that conventional wisdom just doesn't know how to play. If we can behave like a chef, reasoning with first principles to understand how the game is played, then we can determine how far away we are from success for a career option we're considering. And as long as we can win the board game in our lifetime, then the career belongs in our reality box. But this makes for a super long list of possible careers. So to ensure we're spending our time considering careers that are a good fit for us, we should be cognizant of the distance from our starting point to the success point, our potential pace for improving at the game, and our willingness to persist at the board game so that we keep playing until we've won. This is obviously a fairly abstract exercise, and it's tough to know the exact answer for each variable of the progress equation, but it's better to think about it even if we don't know the exact answers, rather than to ignore it altogether and hope for the best. Well, it's time to dive into the option pool, and this is where our wants overlap with what's possible. In other words, it's our feasible career options that mesh well with our yearning hierarchy. As Tim illustrates, a common and very incorrect way to think about choosing a career option is that we're choosing between different career tunnels. You just jump in and boom, you're gone forever. But that's not how moving into a new career works. Thank God. And thinking that's how it works makes this entire process so much more daunting than it needs to be, which can lead to us avoiding a decision or action altogether. So please, we have to squash that mentality. When considering a career option, we are not making a 40-year decision. Okay? Rather than tunnels, a career path is much more like a series of connected dots. We can all look backwards in time and see how different dots brought us to where we are today. The challenge, though, is that it's difficult to impossible to map out our dots into the future. Steve Jobs once gave a commencement address where he talked about this.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
RIP. Of course, it would be nice to have our entire roadmap figured out before we move forward. And there's no harm in trying to map out our dots in the future, but the reality is we just can't predict the dots. All we can do is focus on what it takes to get to our next dot. Side note, this dot dilemma is certainly one reason why some people prefer a more corporate or traditional career path, and that's because the dots are fairly laid out for you there. And there's nothing wrong with that. If dot ambiguity is especially painful for you, a more traditional path might be the right option for you. When evaluating our options, we should think of ourselves as scientists, where society is our lab and the dot is our chance to test hypotheses from our option pool. We can also think of a dot as a bit like a first date with a new career. We rarely marry the first person we ever go on a date with, and when we do find the one, we're rarely ready to propose to them after just one date. The point is, a dot is a test. It's the first step. It's not updating our LinkedIn profile with a new career and telling our friends we're changing careers. It's just an initial first step. But I know it's still daunting. And that's because deep down, we are all frightened animals. And taking a step in a new direction can be scary as hell. Our fears can result in us procrastinating or making the conscious decision to take no action at all. But if we're stuck and not moving towards a new dot, we need to bring back our yearning octopus, because our actions should be a reflection of our authentic yearnings and how we prioritize them on our yearning hierarchy shelf. If our actions aren't coherent with our priorities, it's because our subconscious yearnings are rebelling against our conscious mind. We should think of this situation like a kindergarten class. I love this metaphor, where our wisest self is the teacher and our deprioritized yearnings are 5-year-olds who are disrupting the class. It's our job to talk to these little rebels and explain to them why they've been deprioritized and why this is better for the entire class in the long run. It's not easy, but good teachers stick with it until they've got their class under control. If we're still not taking action after some internal pep talks, then our new priority has to be becoming a better kindergarten teacher. Because until we do, we're allowing the 5-year-olds to run the class. And in this metaphor, the class is our life. Once we do take the step and we're on dot 1, we'll feel a huge sense of relief. But then we'll realize we suck at dot 1. And we'll start to question everything. And the little kindergartners will absolutely go into meltdown mode. Our deprioritized yearnings will be screaming for greener pastures, and our octopus will be pissed. But, stay calm, because we planned for this. We planned for this type of unhappiness. Because our octopus will never be fully satisfied. Pure happiness for every single tentacle is an awful goal. The goal we're aiming for is contentment. Tim describes contentment, and I'm going to quote him here because I think this is quite beautiful, as the satisfying feeling that you're currently taking the best crack you can at a good life path. That what you're working on might prove to be a piece of an eventual puzzle you can feel really proud of. Chasing happiness is an amateur move. Feeling contentment in those times when your choices and your circumstances have combined to pull it off, and knowing you have all that you could ever ask for is for the wise. So we're on dot 1 and fighting through all the challenges and enjoying all the newness that comes with being a beginner. Well, one way or another, we'll eventually be ready for our next dot. There are 2 reasons for us to move to a new dot. One is because we're keeping with our current A to Star mission and we're ready for a new strategic move, the next move on the board game. This is what persistence looks like. A second explanation for a move is because we're looking to explore a new mission altogether, a reboot of our career path. Changing dots is inevitable. It's how we move forward one way or another. But we should make sure the impulse to make the move is coming from our wisest self, not a restless yearning that we have intentionally deprioritized. Again, our octopus is always going to whine in the basement of our subconscious. Our goal with this entire exercise is to be in control of why it's whining. Between our own yearnings and the external demands of life, there will always be so many things vying for our time and attention. But we owe it to our old-ass selves, the 90-year-old version of us on our deathbed, to spend our time doing whatever it is we truly want to do. And a big part of that is picking a career that actually fits. Major thanks to Tim Urban for sharing his brain with all of us. I hope I did a decent job conveying his work in this video. If you want to read Tim's work, you can visit waitbutwhy.com. If you're interested in more videos from me about how to find and pursue a career you enjoy, please find me on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever else. Thanks everyone.